You ever wonder what it really takes to make a masterpiece? Well, sometimes it takes an all-out war. And that's exactly what we're diving into today. The absolutely wild story of how The Godfather, one of the greatest films of all time, almost never happened.
Look, we all know that legendary line, "I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse." But the real story here is a little twisted. It's about a bunch of filmmakers who had to make an offer the studio and the actual mob could refuse, and somehow they had to convince them not to.
And boy, did that gamble pay off. We're talking about the film the American Film Institute ranks as the second greatest American movie ever, just behind Citizen Kane. Think about that. It's not just some movie, right? It's a genuine piece of our culture.
But getting there? Oh, that legendary status was forged in fire. The making of this film was just pure chaos, a high-stakes fight that almost killed the whole project like a dozen times over.
And at the center of it all, you had the director, Francis Ford Coppola, and the producer, Al Ruddy. And these guys were basically fighting a war on two completely different fronts. On one side, you had their own studio, Paramount Pictures. And on the other, the actual, real-life New York mob.
Okay, so let's start with the Hollywood battle. You gotta understand, Paramount Pictures was in deep trouble financially. They needed a hit like yesterday. So they just wanted a quick, cheap gangster flick. But Coppola? No. He saw something way bigger. He envisioned this grand, sweeping epic about family.
And nowhere was that clash more obvious than with the casting of Don Vito Corleone. For Coppola and Mario Puzo, the guy who wrote the book, it was a no-brainer. It had to be Marlon Brando. But for the studio, oh man, he was their worst nightmare.
And honestly, you can kind of see where both sides were coming from. Paramount was looking at this guy and seeing a walking financial disaster. He was known for being impossible to work with, and he was coming off a bunch of movies that just totally bombed. But Coppola and Puzo, they saw past all that. They just knew, deep down, that Brando was the only person on Earth with the kind of power and presence to actually be the Godfather.
So to get the execs on board, Brando does this secret screen test at his house. He literally stuffs his cheeks with cotton balls to get that famous bulldog look, messes with his voice to sound like this old mobster Frank Costello. They send the tape to Paramount, and the studio heads their jaws hit the floor. Suddenly, the risk was gone. They saw it. Brando was Don Corleone.
Okay, so they won the Brando battle, but the war was far from over. Next up was the runtime. The studio wanted something short and sweet, under 2 hours 15 so they could get more screenings in a day. Coppola comes back with a movie that's nearly 3 hours long. He's like, look, this is a family saga, it needs room to breathe. And here's the best part. The studio's own reaction proved Coppola was right all along. At first, he caved. He cut the movie down to the length they wanted. And when the execs saw it, they hated it. They told him, "You shot a movie but brought down a trailer." It was just empty. They finally understood that all the stuff they made him cut out, the family moments, the character bits, that was the movie. So they told him to put it all back. So, you'd think that was enough drama, right? Wrong. The fights inside Hollywood were nothing, literally nothing, compared to what was happening out on the streets of New York. While Coppola was fighting with execs, producer Al Ruddy was dealing with the actual mob.
Yeah, the head of the Colombo crime family, a guy named Joseph Colombo, was leading the charge to shut the whole production down. He went on this huge public campaign saying the movie was an insult to Italian Americans, and behind the scenes, he was using all sorts of intimidation tactics to stop it.
And he did this through an organization he started called the Italian American Civil Rights League. Now, on paper, it looked like a totally legit group fighting for a good cause. But in reality, it was basically a front for the mob to organize protests, make threats, and just generally make life impossible for the film crew.
So, to save the movie, Al Ruddy does something absolutely insane. He goes and meets with Colombo directly, and he agrees to let this mob boss have script approval. Colombo's big demand? It was surprisingly simple. He just wanted them to take out the words Mafia and Cosa Nostra, that's it. Ruddy agrees, and boom, all the problems just disappear. And for making this deal that saved the entire movie, Paramount fired him. You can't make this stuff up. But Colombo wasn't the only powerful guy they ticked off. There was this character in the book, Johnny Fontaine, a singer who uses his mob connections to land a movie role. And well, let's just say it sounded a lot like a certain Frank Sinatra. And Frank was not happy about it.
This whole thing boiled over into a real-life showdown. Sinatra sees Mario Puzo, the author, at a restaurant in Beverly Hills and just goes ballistic. He's screaming at him, threatening him, even accusing him of being an FBI informant. I mean, this is life not just imitating art, it was actively trying to destroy it.
So think about it. You've got a studio that hates you on one side, and the actual mob that wants to shut you down on the other. How in the world did this movie not only get made, but end up being a masterpiece? Well, it all came down to one last, incredibly risky move. Remember Al Ruddy, the producer who got fired? He arranges a private, secret screening of the finished movie for Joe Colombo and his crew. I mean, this is a move that could have literally gotten him killed. It was the ultimate peace offering, and everything, the whole film, was riding on this one night. So the credits roll, the lights come up, and the mobsters loved it. They totally loved it. They didn't see it as an insult at all. They saw it as a story about things they understood: family, respect, loyalty. And get this, they loved it so much, they all chipped in and gave the projectionist a $1,000 tip. $1,000!
So, what was the recipe for this masterpiece? It was chaos, plain and simple. All that fighting with the studio, all the negotiating with real-life mobsters, it didn't hurt the movie. It actually made it stronger. It gave it this raw, authentic edge that you can still feel today.
And all this really leaves you with one big question, right? Could a movie even be made like this today? I mean, in a world of focus groups and data-driven decisions, is there any room left for something that's born out of so much danger, so much defiance, and just pure, stubborn artistic vision? That's an offer that today's Hollywood might just have to refuse.